Welcome to Pax Europiana, this time from Vöcklabruck. And that's a very beautiful old ancient market town here in the heart of Upper Austria, basically very much in the center. I'm also dressed for the Austrian National Day already, because today it's the 25th, tomorrow will be the 26th of October. That's the Austrian National Day. It's the day I, of course, celebrate our future NATO membership. But it's the day where Austria declared in 1955 neutrality, and we have paid this price for unity, and I'm celebrating this every year as the NATO Day. And I will be now more loud and public outspoken also to call for NATO membership, because Austria is pretty perfect country. If you look around these market towns, we have many of them, and they are really very, very good ancient pearls of urban development going back 1,000 years, and they are very beautiful. I want to show you some of these treasures. This is the entry of the old town basically, and here, over there's the exit where you see Vöcklabruck is really a beautiful town. It's in a way the entry gate to the so-called Salzkammergut. This was the imperial property of the Habsburg family. They have owned that land which was rich for its salt trade. When you go then south, you see this amazing lake district of Upper Austria. I will try to show you some of them tomorrow on the National Day. Some of these beautiful lakes, they are really amazing, and Austria has these treasures. This was basically the imperial holiday homes and of course the income of the royal family, of the Habsburg family, because salt was very expensive. It was a treasure, and they have had this enormous treasure of the Salzkammergut with Hallstatt, especially the most important salt mine, and Salzburg obviously close. And it's very close to Salzburg here, but it belongs to Upper Austria. Linz is the capital, and it is a very beautiful place, and I will show you more of the Lake District tomorrow. What's my video today is partly on city development, because here you see what we have done in Albania so successfully, and not me, but the American Albanian Development Fund. This is this urban revitalization. That means you remove the cars from the main square, and you try to not to have it a gigantic parking space, but a market square, because these towns have developed as market squares. Yeah? And it's also a question of the for the free market or for the market, but back to the market square. This is how towns have developed. The towns are market instruments where people meet, exchange goods and services, and learn from each other and meet each other, and not parking squares. Yeah? We have unfortunately a development now with the cars. Everybody says, oh, you need it for the urban development because otherwise nobody comes to shop. Yeah? Look, we have to find other developments. Here you have a most beautiful square, really very beautiful, and it's full of cars. I don't know how many cars here. In Monday morning, it is a Monday today, there were certainly hundreds of cars at this market square. This is not how cities should be managing their public space. Yeah? And insofar, Vöcklabruck can learn from Korča and can learn also from Škodra and all this wonderful development, which we call this business improvement districts, where in the morning you can have access, but no car can park here. These are no parking spaces. Yeah? You should really give the market squares back, not as a parking square, but as a market square. And that's very important for the revitalization of towns, for tourism development, and for many other aspects in economic development, and also for lifestyle. Sitting out even when it's colder than in Korča, there's no doubt. It's very beautiful here, and it needs to be a market square. So the second thing is, of course, macroeconomic and macro-politically and geostrategic is NATO membership, which is not perfect. And I will make several videos about that one. But you know, this part was free. The reason why we have all these museums, and I will also walk to these museums of the refugees now. Because why there is the Refugee Museum here? Because this was all liberated by the Americans. It was General Patton who liberated Upper Austria, and this part, south of the Danube, contrary to the part I live, in the north of the Danube, this part was free. The Americans never gave it back. The north of the Danube, the so-called, I call it Granitland, but maybe clearer to say the German word Müllviertel, this was given back to Stalin. Not back, it was basically handed over as a sign of appeasement, and the Danube was made the border. And the people in the north and the people in the east of the Ends, they were left to the Soviets. And we had to make this neutrality deal. We as a state, Raab, Fiegel and the great heroes of Austrian freedom, and the Americans obviously, they had to make this deal to remove the Soviet troops. Eastern Austria and Northern Upper Austria were the only parts in Europe where the Soviets voluntarily left. It was highly significant. But we had to pay this price of neutrality. But obviously today, it's 30 years now. In 2021, it's 30 years the Soviet Union is no longer. In December 1991, the Soviet Union has dissolved itself, and the Ukrainians, the Belarusians and the Russians have declared their own national state. And now we are 30 years later, and we are still not in NATO. And saying, it is the Soviet Union, yeah, okay. And Russia doesn't like it, okay, but it's not the successor state. I repeat, Alois Mock has not accepted that in 1993. Russia has no sovereign successor rights to the Austrian State Treaty. That's so important. And here you see this beautiful town. It's really very nice. Of course, you know, Albania has a lot to offer in terms of sitting quality, but it's not too cold here. Yeah, it's not too cold here. It's just, you know, the management of the town is, of course, with all this car-focused development, that's not good. It should really learn something from Albania here in Vöcklabruck. The other thing is, I would like to say is also that Vöcklabruck is in a way also the center of Albanian and Kosovo-Albanian immigration. That's very positive. Here is really like a boom town. There's a lot of work. Next to it is the tourism district of the lakes and also the construction industry, because not only since Corona, but always, this is the place where the richest people of Austria live. Not all of them, there's also many of them in Carinthia, that's also where the southern Alpine lakes are. But here we are in the northern Alpine Lake region. And there's a lot of rich people who want to live here, and obviously that's bringing a lot of employment in the tourism sector, in the construction sector. It's booming. And all the equivalent services attached to it. And that's very good. And obviously, because Austria is divided like this, there's a lot of Serb and Bosnian immigration in Vienna and around Vienna. And here around Linz, Wels, Steyr, these are the three most important cities. Here, this industrial triangle. There's a lot of industrial and SME jobs, and a lot of people, especially from Kosovo during the migration treaties from '72, the so-called Gastarbeiter treaties, they have moved then to these industrial heartlands of Austria, and then they have settled here. Additionally came a lot of people then during the 90s to be in safety from the Serb and Milosevic wars, and additionally many came then after the victory, liberation, also for a better economic future. They drive back then and bring back all the remittances and build up Kosovo, obviously, and most they are from Kosovo, some from Bosnia, from Croatia. And that's very important. We have these strong links here between Upper Austria and the Southern Balkans, and that's very important. We have to keep them. And this is a long-standing tradition. I will now walk to the Museum of Refugees, because that's what I wanted to explain. The reason why the tradition is always has been openness here in Vöcklabruck is because there was safety. There was American-backed security from May 45 onwards. Yeah? When Patton crossed the Inn from Bavaria and liberated this region, it was clear there is no Soviet power here. This was decisive. Hundreds and thousands of people who were coming from German minorities or other people who didn't want to be under Soviet occupation. They ran with everything they could for their life not to live under the Soviet Union power reach. And of course, Vöcklabruck, Wels, and the region here, there was opportunities. First of all, there was safety, and that's most important. And obviously, by time then came opportunities. I worked myself for this Austrian politician, Mr. Rübig, his family coming from Romania. And they have a blacksmith, metal, it's a big company. But this is the tradition. And the German-speaking minorities in Romania, they were always in mining. Then they came back through trying to be in safety. And they brought with them their knowledge about the industrial design and about real, and that's basically here, we are here in this museum of the Heimatvertriebenen, they call it. Yeah, this is the refugees. Yeah, so this is, for example, I show you here. This is one of the kind of vehicles with. They went from Romania here. This is the Donauschwaben. That's basically from this Vojvodina area mostly. Here is the various. It's 6 groups. Besiegen-Deutsche, Buchenland-Deutsche. That's from Bukowina. That's from Donauschwaben, that's in Serbia today, Siebenbürger Sachsen in Romania, and Sudetendeutsche. Obviously a lot of people who were expelled from what is today the Czech Republic and from Slovakia. And what they did, there were, here is written, about 6,000, they call them Alt-Austrians. That means basically Germans from German-speaking minorities from the former Austrian monarchy. They were basically then coming here as refugees, 6,000 of them. And they found opportunities here. They stayed. Many went to America as well, I'm sure, to Australia, to Canada, and came back later as Schwarzeneggers or Stronachs. We have this tradition, but nevertheless many of them stayed and they found a new home here. This is the museum. I don't know if it's open now, but this is in one of my podcasts I have already mentioned about all these aspects. Here you see the museum of refugees basically, and now it's somehow they do this kind of associations, and they have all these ancient customs, and you see ethnic groups of German speakers in former Austria. That's basically the monarchy here until 1918, and they have kept this tradition open. And that's what I want to say. That's why security matters so much, because why they came here? Because of security. And that's of course absolutely important to have security. And today, of course, translated what is Patton's army in 45. That's of course today is NATO. That's why I campaign for NATO on this National Day in Vöcklabruck, and I think it's very appropriate to do it. And here they have all these kind of conditions they were living at that time. Obviously it was poverty, it was very difficult. Yeah? Austria was also very poor at that time, and they have then discovered this kind of opportunities. It was very difficult in the beginning, but it was then gradually possible to build up Upper Austria with a lot of inflow of new labor, of people who were ready from Bukovina, from Serbia, from Romania, from Hungary, and they were now today I think it's closed only on Wednesday until 9:30. I will come back again and try to. It's only Wednesday open. It's not very big, unfortunately, but this tradition is open, and it's also a moral obligation, because now you see the property prices are rising and there's a lot of investment here and the whole area is booming, and especially Corona brought now a big boom in these holiday properties, and people who are thinking they can work digitally, moving to this beautiful location. And then obviously it's booming here and people are rich. You wouldn't believe how many banks are here in Vöcklabruck, and it's basically the commercial center of the Salzkammergut in many ways, because the other areas are more touristic, like Munden and Ebensee and these whole villages around the lake. They are obviously the beautiful places to spend free time. Here, if you want to do business, if you want to work, this is the place to be. And also there's the medical center, there's the hospitals. This is basically the commercial hub of this tourism region. And it's very rich. But there's this moral obligation, I think, of when you see the history and the tragedies of the past, then also here this feeling of openness and this feeling of responsibility, and also this kind of reconnection with history is very important to be open for people from Southeastern Europe and from Ukraine. And luckily I have the feeling that's happening here. Here they understand to be open, different than in Vienna, which is governed, and unfortunately Austria has closed the labor market in the last, especially since the migration crisis, and it's very difficult to get work permits, to get living permits, residence permits, and Austria has made the worst of all political choices of closing everything down, protectionist trade policies of Sebastian Kurz and Mrs. Köstinger, very famous and very bad. I criticize them very much. And also against trade. They are against Mercosur, against TTIP, against trade agreements in principle, but also they have blocked the labor markets, yeah? Especially against our friends from Kosovo, from Albania, from Bosnia, also from Serbia. They have been really very protectionist. Yeah? And that was of course popular, okay, against the others. Yeah? This kind of low-level populism, but it has to come to an end, yeah? Because it's hurting our own economy, it's against our historic moral traditions, and it is wrong morally, politically, economically. We have now to open our labor market to all people from Southeastern Europe, like I called since 5 years in my open letter to President Fischer. And in all these activities I did for Kosovo and for the whole Balkans and for Ukraine, we have to build one common labor market. We have to open our labor market fully to the people of Southeastern Europe. That's strategically, economically, politically, morally, absolutely imperative. And that's, I think, also, for people who are not ready to understand the economics, the history, I cannot understand it. This was always an international center here. And most of all, as I have explained, after the Second World War. And it's beautiful, it's a trade center. This is a hub where the trade of the Salzkammergut here, this was in the south, it was difficult, the Alps and everything. Here was then the commercial hub. And then the people went to the big industrial center in Linz and in Bohemia and in Germany. This is the history. Trade, openness, people, commerce, SMEs. And this is the tradition. And we have to connect again to that one. Not to close and to cut and to exclude and to be like we are rich and the rest we don't care. This is wrong. This is economically, politically, strategically and morally wrong. So we need a new approach in Austria, in the labor market, in the trade policy. And now with Schallenberg, I'm actually hopeful that there is reason back in the top level of governance, because we really need that in all aspects. And when you look why the last 30 years Austria became so successful, it was exactly this role of center of Southeastern Europe. And this has really helped the whole economy, the whole people. We are now much more, and we are much more colorful, and we are much richer. I know that very well. I lived here 30 years ago. It was very different, much poorer. And now look at the prosperity everywhere. We need, of course, also better policy. We cannot have, here you see all these nice places to dine out, and then you see car, 500 cars. This is not the way to do it. We need to do it a bit smarter, and we need to do things better and to be more open, to be more inclusive, to be also more transparent, as we all know. That's also very important, and we can learn actually from the reforms of Southeastern Europe, because, for example, the cadastre and the building permit system, the urban planning of Kosovo and especially Macedonia is now more transparent than in Austria. And we are now at this phase now where a new government has taken over now and was constituted in Upper Austria. And now it's time to reform also the way we do things, because it's not perfect. Neither on taxation, which is my 20 years campaign for lower tax, but also on other aspects. We really have to be better and to get going and to somehow catch up with modernity. What Schüssel, in the 4 years of power, 6 years all in all, but in the 4 years where he reformed until from 2000 to 2004, he reformed so much, so effectively, from infrastructure to the labor market to the privatization. That was really good. He brought Austria towards Europe, really, in the structural reforms from 2000 to 2004 until 5, and then he stopped reforming, and then he lost, unfortunately. But Kurz has done very little, and it was a tragedy. He didn't want to reform anything because he wanted to stay in power for decades, I think. I mean, unbelievable. But I wrote him so often, messages, videos, texts and whatever, to start reforming in the beginning of a mandate and not to wait until you are over and anyhow, a tragedy. No, now let's conclude here very clearly. It's the 25th of October, I'm in Vöcklabruck. I call for NATO membership, for lower taxes, for EU enlargement, for NATO enlargement, and for one common labor market, including all the Balkans, treating all the immigrants who are now integrated fellow citizens better. This is a moral obligation, and being all better Europeans, being better and more united is important. That's also, I publish all these op-eds in the various newspapers now to call for more unity, more openness and better governance and a new style of harmony inside the European Union, built on our common institutions, all to join NATO, all in the Eurozone, and faster enlargement. And that should be also from the Austrian perspective. What then can we do here from Vöcklabruck? I call for NATO membership, for fast-track enlargement of the NATO allies in the European Union, for immediately Euroization of the Eastern European countries who want, and also for a common open labor market. And the German labor market, much more open already. Austrian labor market must be open now, fully open to all friends who will be in the future in the EU, all the 9 countries, not to Turkey, but yes to Kosovo, Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia, Albania, Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia. This is the clear moral obligation from our history, and that's economically rational, and that's what we should do. And more to come. Thanks a lot for the hospitality in beautiful Vöcklabruck, and I will make another video when the sun is shining and beautiful Lake District tomorrow. And I wish you all a happy National Day with your Austrians. If you are not Austrian, you are a friend of Austria and friend of this podcast, please celebrate the Austrian National Day tomorrow by calling for NATO membership. We should fully arrive in the West. We should fully join the Western world, the free world. Of course, you know, it doesn't make a big difference, Austria or not, but it makes a big moral difference if we are all united. And we shouldn't be abused by the Serbs or by any kind of pro-Russian Hungarians, that there is some kind of Austrian way outside of American Europe, outside of NATO, some kind of special Austrian model. No, that's a mistake. We should all be more united in the same institutions, the Poles in the Eurozone, the Czechs in the Eurozone, the Hungarians in the Eurozone, the Austrians and the Serbs and the Kosovos and the Bosnians in NATO, and everybody to be aligned to our common foreign policy. And no Judith Wager from Hungary. It's not a European imperialism, it's a solidarity-driven united Europe. And that's our dream, and that's what we should make reality. And that is very important to work. And there is no justification for this Polish special kind of extravaganzas or the Hungarian pro-Russian treasonable activities in the energy sector and so on and so on. More to come. Anyhow, let me conclude. It's a special day here from Boomtown, beautiful market town in Vöcklabruck. I call for more of this decency in European politics, and I want to thank you very much for watching this video. More to come from Pax Europiana, the podcast for peace and prosperity here from Vöcklabruck, and soon from the Lake District tomorrow. Bye. Thanks a lot.